Hello, I'm Dr. Steven Giannopoulos, also known as DrStevenG. Welcome to my YouTube page. Before you commit to improving your health, wellness, and fitness this year, do this first if you want to improve your chances at success. But before I explain what that is, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Okay, what do I want you to do before you start a new program? Well, I want to make sure you have your sleep dialed in. Sleep is the one thing that will either ensure your success or guarantee your failure. Allow me to explain. It's estimated that 40 million Americans suffer from sleep apnea, 40 million adults. Sleep apnea is when, during the night, your ability to breathe freely is obstructed multiple times per minute. How do you know you have obstructive sleep apnea? Well, the gold standard is to do a sleep study. That means you go to a place, you go to sleep, and they can measure your quality of sleep and how many times per night that you're obstructing your airflow, reducing your oxygen carrying capacity in your blood. You see, when you're breathing, at any given time, your blood should be saturated with oxygen at 98, 99, or 100%. Actually, 97 is considered low. So when you're doing a sleep study, you'll typically be wearing all kinds of devices and they'll be measuring your oxygen. They'll also be looking at your brainwave function. They'll be looking at a lot of things. They'll be looking at your heart. And what we find is that people with obstructive sleep apnea can have their oxygen saturation go as low as in the 70s, which is ridiculous. Like, that's people with, end stage lung failure. They experience oxygen saturation levels that low. So obstructive sleep apnea obviously is a major cause of people not getting a good night's sleep, not getting restful sleep, not getting restorative or reparative sleep, and your sleep architecture is going to be negatively influenced, which means you're not going to go through the different stages of sleep. The stages of sleep are really important in your ability to remember what you learned the day before, right? It's kind of like you put information on your desktop, and during the night while you're sleeping, it gets downloaded into the hard drive. Well, that's the way your body works. You learn new information during the day, and then what happens is during the night, you can download that into long-term memory. Well, that requires you to go through the different stages of sleep properly. Now, this talk is not going to go into the various stages of sleep and the architecture around it, but one thing we do know is that those stages of sleep trigger certain immune responses, stress responses, blood sugar responses, so many things, and obstructive sleep apnea will actually just interfere with your ability to go from one stage of sleep to another. Now, a lot of people have devices like the Aura Ring, I have it here, the Whoop, and the Apple Watch, and they'll measure their sleep. And these are directionally semi-accurate. It gives valuable information, tells you how restless you are, tells you how many times a night you might be waking up, which can be a sign that you do have obstructive sleep apnea. One of the ways that people find out that they have a problem is that their spouse will say, you snore. You snore loudly, and then all of a sudden you just stop breathing, and it's kind of bizarre. You're very lucky if you're diagnosed through that, because really the best way to do it is to actually study your sleep to find out if you have obstructive sleep apnea, because not everybody snores and not everybody has a spouse that can hear what's going on. Now, the treatment for obstructive sleep apnea is kind of bizarre, because what happens is you have to create continuous passive motion of air. So what happens is, to have positive airway flow, you need a machine that kind of pushes air through, and that machine keeps the airway open, so it dramatically improves your situation. However, it also dries out your oral cavity and your nasal cavity, and this is a big problem, because if you dry this out, the microbiome is going to suffer, and the microbiome's job is to take the nitrates from the food you eat and turn it into nitric oxide, which your body will then use as a molecule to manage your blood pressure and so many other things. So nitric oxide production requires you to have a closed mouth and a moist environment in order to not have the lack of nitric oxide contribute to heart disease and other health problems. So yes, the CPAP will solve the oxygen saturation issue, but it's not going to solve the nitric oxide situation. And nitric oxide, again, is one of the most important molecules that your body makes, might be the most important. It is involved. You improve nitric oxide production, you will dramatically reduce your risk for virtually every chronic disease that we know about, including Alzheimer's, diabetes, heart disease, heart attack, stroke, all of those things. So a CPAP is a good solution, but there might be better solutions for some of you. Now, what causes obstructive sleep apnea? Being dramatically overweight certainly is an issue, and when people lose weight, sometimes the obstructive sleep apnea just goes away, and that's great. But there are also people who are not overweight who experience obstructive sleep apnea, and that, is something that, all right, well, getting more fit may not be the solution. One thing we do know through the world of anesthesiology is that the position of your head and neck for the flow of air is really, really important. The flow of air unobstructed while you're under anesthesia getting surgery, it of course keeps you alive, but it's very much dependent on the position of your head and neck. Anesthesiologists have known this for decades. So what can we learn from that? Well, what we can do is support our head and neck in the most optimal position for air to flow. And it just so happens that when your neck is supported, not your head, when your neck is supported and your head is in its proper position, well then there's less of a reason for your jaw to open. An open jaw and not breathing through your nose is one of the triggers or one of the main issues associated with snoring and obstructive sleep apnea. So having a closed jaw also allows your oral cavity to remain moist, allowing the microbiome to do its job with nitric oxide during the night. So some people have been taping their mouth shut, which is kind of strange. Although it works for some people, taping your mouth shut may not be the best solution, and I'm not even sure if there's risk associated with that for people with severe obstructive sleep apnea. However, if there's another way to incentivize your jaw to be closed, we'd want to know what that is. Now, when your head and your neck are in its proper position and nerves coming from your neck are not impinged upon, then you can have proper nerve flow to all of the muscles of the jaw, of the tongue, of the pharynx, of the larynx, that will allow for that passageway to remain open. You see, your sleep quality is indispensable. Sleep is something that no mammal on Earth has evolved to not need. We all have to sleep. All mammals have to sleep, and it's so indispensable. And think about it. If you're living in a predatory environment in the jungle somewhere and you have to sleep, you're now susceptible to a predator. And you would think that evolution would have figured out a way for us to not need sleep. And of course, that never happened. It never will happen, because sleep is your body's way of repairing. Sleep is your brain's way of making sure that it can continue to do the great job that it does during the waking hours. So sleep is a very active, energy-consuming process. And when it interferes with virtually every system in your body, your ability to make stress hormones, sex hormones, to not be resistant to insulin, to make sure that you're not experiencing weight gain for virtually no reason other than the obstruction of proper hormone levels, right? Sometimes we gain weight and we think it's diet. Well, our diet impacts the hormones associated with how we process food, and those hormones have names like insulin and cortisol, etc., and those are all dramatically impacted by our sleep. So the main takeaway here is make sure that your body is in its proper position. The position that is optimal for proper airflow is flat on your back, but you have to have a little bit of extension in your neck. You have to have support of your neck, especially in today's world where we're, sitting at computers with our head forward and looking at our devices for multiple hours a day. The position of our neck throughout the day is creating an environment at night that's preventing us from having proper airflow. So supporting your neck and providing a little bit of extension and traction, that can help restore the normal curves, improve your sleep, and negate some of the negative effects of sitting at a computer and looking at our devices each day. So don't underestimate how important it is to get your sleep hygiene correct, especially if you're about to embark on the work it takes to improve your diet, improve your health, improve your fitness. Here during the new year, we often commit to those things, but now we're a couple of weeks before the end of the year and making those commitments. It's a good idea to make sure that your sleep environment is optimal, your body position is optimal. Well, we want to make sure that we're on a good schedule. We want to kind of rise and we want to wake and sleep with the cycles of the sun, go to bed early, wake up early, that kind of a thing. But we also want to make sure that our sleeping environment is completely pitch black, silent. We don't need, if you have a television in your room, get rid of it. No screens while you're sleeping. And this will allow you to get with the 24-hour cycle of the sun. When the sun goes down and you're in your home and you're not ready to go to bed, you shouldn't have all the lights on at full brightness. It's better to have some lamps around the house that are using maybe even an incandescent 40-watt light bulb, just so you don't stub your toe. But if everything is done, kitchen's clean, dinner is over, keep the lights in the home dim in those couple of hours before bedtime to allow your brain to know it's nighttime. Because if you have these big blaring, halogen lights that are on, they're excessive in their blue light content, then what happens is you're kind of telling your brain it's still daylight when it might be 11 o'clock at night. And that's not good, because what happens is we say, all right, I have to go to bed, we shut the lights off, and then we just lay there. And we're not able to fall asleep because we didn't have the signal that it is nighttime telling our brain to prepare for sleep. So one of the best things that you can do to start your day is, as the sun comes up, to spend about 10 minutes outside, walking your dog, taking a walk yourself, allowing the daylight to hit your face. That tells your brain it's morning. And then before the sun goes down, again, take your dog for a walk or take yourself for a walk, and make sure that your face, without glasses, without sunglasses or anything like that, is allowed to experience that setting sun, telling your brain the evening is here. Your body can then prepare for what's coming when it comes to falling asleep. Now, when you're back in your house after you've been outside during the sunset, then you don't want to have your screens, blaring you, a 72-inch LED screen kind of giving you a rush of blue light telling you that it's, morning, when really it's 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So you kind of want to keep the lights on a more natural color. It's good to use lamps with low wattage incandescent light bulbs just to navigate through your house so you don't stub a toe. And that creates a better environment. And of course, any television or anything associated with that is for outside of the bedroom. The bedroom should be for one thing, all right, maybe two things, but for one thing only, and that is sleep. So remember, let's dial in our sleep hygiene. Let's make sure we're getting good quality sleep. I do like to use sleep trackers. I use the Oura Ring. I also have the Apple Watch, but I don't wear the Apple Watch at night. I like the Oura Ring because it will provide similar data as the Apple Watch. However, you can set the Oura Ring to be on airplane mode while you're sleeping, so it can upload the data the next day rather than while you're sleeping. I don't like there to be Wi-Fi signals going through my brain while I'm sleeping. Whereas the Apple Watch is kind of constantly communicating with the phone. I take that off at night and I use the Oura Ring to gather my sleep data. I want to know what my oxygen saturation is. I want to know if I'm restless, how many times I'm waking up at night. I want to know my heart rate variability. And when you have this kind of a dashboard, you get a sense of your readiness for the next day. Maybe that'll determine, maybe if you're not so ready for the next day, you may not do as vigorous of a workout on that day. You can make better decisions. So again, having some feedback, having like a dashboard to measure your quality of sleep is a good idea for some people, so it's something I'm a big fan of. If you have any questions about the content of this video, please put them in the comments. If you have any comments about the content of future videos, also put those in the comments. We'd be happy to take a look at them.